Ethan Moore noticed it the moment he stepped into the bank branch. The air smelled clean and sharp, like polished floors and quiet rules. People spoke softly, as if money itself demanded respect. A digital clock ticked on the wall, each second, landing heavy in his chest. He told himself this would be quick, in and out, signature or a refusal. Nothing more. Dot behind him. His stepfather, Ron, walked with stiff steps and a tight jaw. Ron wore his anger like a coat, heavy and always on. Ethan had learned long ago how to read that walk, how to measure danger by the sound of Ron's shoes. On tile. Today, the sound was fast. Too fast. Ethan's mother, Claire, followed close, holding her purse with both hands. She looked smaller inside the bank, like the walls had pressed her inward. She avoided Ethan's eyes the way she always did when she needed him to do something he didn't want to do. They stopped at the counter. The young woman behind it smiled politely. Her name tag said Mara Collins. She had neat hair, calm eyes, and the kind of voice that made people feel safe without knowing why. "How can I help you today?" Mara asked. Ron leaned forward. "Loan. Paperwork. He's co-signing." Ethan felt the words hit him before Mara even looked his way. Co-signing again. The last time had nearly ruined him. Late payments, angry calls. Own credit sinking under someone else's choices. Mara turned. "To Ethan, is that correct, sir?" Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. His heart beat too fast. He thought of the envelope he'd found last week. Past due notices, final warnings. Things Ron said were mistakes, but never fixed. "I need to see the terms first," Ethan said. His voice came out steady, surprising even him. "I can't sign without understanding everything." Ron's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We've talked about this," Ethan said. "And I said I needed time." Mara nodded. "That's reasonable. Can walk you through?" Ron cut her off. "No, we don't need a lecture, just the signature." Ethan felt heat rise in his neck. "I'm not signing today." The words hung there, simple, clear. Final. Claire let out a small sound, almost a gasp. She leaned close to Ethan and whispered, "Please, not here." Ron straightened slowly. His face went tight, then smooth. Too smooth. "We'll step outside," he said. "Have a quick word." Ethan knew better. He shook his head. "We can talk here." Ron's hand landed on Ethan's shoulder, fingers digging in. To anyone watching, it looked like a firm but loving touch. To Ethan, it was a warning. Outside, Ron said again. Claire's eyes filled. "Ethan," she whispered. "Don't. Shame us." That did it. The word shame hit harder than any slap. Ethan followed them to the side door, past the brochures and the quiet stairs. The door closed behind them, cutting off the comm like a switch. The side area was narrow, hidden from the street. Sunlight barely reached it. Ron turned fast. "You think you're smart." "Q," Ron said. "You think you get to say no to me?" "I said I needed time," Ethan replied. "That's not wrong." Ron shoved him hard. Ethan hit the wall, breath leaving his lungs in a sharp burst. Pain flared in his side. "Sign the paper," Ron hissed, "or don't come back home." Claire stood frozen. "Ron, stop," she said, but her voice had no strength. Ethan straightened, shaking. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't fight. He had learned that fighting only made it worse. "I'm not signing," he said. "I can't." Ron struck him then, not with a fist to the face. Not something loud. A quick, brutal hit to the T. Ribs meant to hurt, but not show. Ethan cried out despite himself. "Don't," Claire whispered. "People will hear." Ron leaned close to Ethan's ear. "You will ruin us," he said. "And I won't forgive you." Ethan slid down the wall, gasping. The pain burned deep and sharp. He tasted metal. "Get up," Ron said. "We're going back in." Inside the bank, the quiet felt louder. Ethan's jacket hung wrong now. His breathing was shallow. He tried to stand straight, tried to look normal. Faye failed. Mara looked up as they approached. Her smile faded. "Everything okay?" She asked. "Yes," Ron said quickly. "Family stuff." Claire nodded too fast. "We're fine." Mara's eyes went to Ethan. She saw the way he avoided turning fully, the way one hand pressed lightly to his side, the way his face had lost color. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, forcing the words. I can't co-sign today." Ron's laugh was sharp. "He's confused." "I'm not," Ethan said. "I'm sure." Mara stopped typing. The keys made no sound now. She studied Ethan's face, then Ron's, then Claire's trembling hands. "Sir," Mara said to Ron, calm but firm, "I'll need a moment with Mr. Moore alone." Ron frowned. "That's not necessary." "It is," Mara said. "Policy." Word landed like a door closing. Ron opened his mouth, then shut it. Stepped back, pulling Claire with him to the waiting chairs. The space between Ethan and the counter felt safer. Not safe. Safer. Mara leaned forward slightly. "Are you hurt?" Ethan hesitated. Telling the truth felt dangerous, but lying felt heavier. "Yes," he said. Mara nodded once. "You don't have to continue this transaction." "I know," Ethan said. "That's why I said no." She slid a glass of water toward him. "Take a breath." He did. Slowly, the pain pulsed, but eased a little. "My stepfather needs money," Ethan said. "He says it's for work, but there are other loans. I found notices." "You're not responsible for his debt," Mara said. "He says I am," Ethan replied. "My mother agrees." Mara's jaw tightened. "No one should force you to sign anything." Ethan glanced toward the waiting area. Ron watched them closely, eyes hard. Claire stared at the floor. "I live with them," Ethan said. "If I don't sign, things get bad." Mara held his gaze. "And if you do sign," Ethan swallowed, "they still get bad." Later, Mara paused. A real pause. The kind that meant thinking, not waiting. "I can end this meeting," she said. "You can leave." Ethan shook his head. "I leave. Now he'll follow." Mara nodded. "Then we'll take this slow." She turned back to her screen and made a few clicks. "I'm unable to proceed without consent from all parties," she said aloud, so Ron could hear. "This file will be closed for today." Double quotes. Ron stood up. "That's ridiculous. It's procedure," Mara replied. "You're welcome to return another time." Ron walked back to the counter, smiling thinly. "We'll be back," he said. To Ethan, "At home." Claire looked up then, eyes shining. "Why are you doing this to us?" She asked that. Ethan felt the question cut deep. "I'm not," he said. "I'm just saying no." Ron grabbed his arm. "We're leaving." Mara stood. "Sir, please remove your hand." Ron froze. Slowly, he let go. "We're done here," he said. They walked out. Ethan felt every step. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright. Ron leaned close again, whispering threats about rent, food, family. Claire cried softly, apologizing to Ron, not to Ethan. When they reached the car, Ron turned. "You have tonight," he said. "Think hard." They drove away, leaving Ethan standing on the sidewalk. His phone buzzed. A message from Ron. A reminder. A warning. Ethan looked back at the bank. Through the glass, he saw Mara watching him. She raised a hand slightly, not waving, just letting him know he wasn't invisible. Ethan pressed his side and took a breath. He didn't know where he would sleep that night, but he knew one thing: he wasn't signing. Ethan sat on the curb outside the bank, letting the late afternoon sun wash over him. His ribs throbbed from Ron's strike, and every breath reminded him of the night ahead. He had nowhere safe to go, nowhere that felt like home. Home had become a place of tension, of fear, of whispered threats. His mother, Claire, had followed him out, but she hadn't spoken. She stood a few feet away, holding her purse tightly, her shoulders curved inward. Her silence felt like both protection and betrayal. Inside the bank, Mara Collins had returned to her desk, but her eyes kept darting to the glass doors. She had seen enough to know this wasn't a normal transaction. Her manager had glanced at her once, raised an eyebrow, then returned to his paperwork, unaware of the subtle storm outside. Mara didn't need his approval. She needed to make sure Ethan was safe. That was more important than any procedure, any policy. Ethan tried to stand but sank back onto the curb. The world seemed heavier now. The street was quiet, and the only movement was the occasional car passing by. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the last time he had felt calm. It was a memory of his father's old guitar, the warm evening sunlight streaming into the living room, the smell of rain outside, the window. He had played those chords for hours, hoping the music would chase away the worry. Now, that music felt like a lifetime ago. Claire stepped closer. Her voice was barely audible. Ethan, she couldn't finish. Her eyes, wet and hesitant, begged him to understand, but Ethan didn't. He only knew that saying no had cost him pain, both physical and emotional. He had tried to protect himself, but in doing so, he had shattered the fragile peace of their household. Ethan looked up as Mara approached from the bank doors. She moved slowly, deliberately, not like a customer or an employee, but like someone who had seen enough pain to recognize it immediately. She held a folder in her hand. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I will be," Ethan said, unsure whether he was convincing her or himself. "You don't have to stay there," Mara said. "There's a cafe a few blocks down. Quiet. Safe. We can sit there, talk, if you want." Ethan hesitated. Trust wasn't easy for him. Every adult had rules, expectations, or hidden motives. Mara, however, seemed different. There was a calm certainty in her eyes that made him want to take a chance. Slowly, he nodded. They walked together, keeping a careful distance from the street. Mara didn't speak much, letting Ethan set the pace. When they reached the small cafe, it was almost empty. Few early customers sipped coffee, some typing quietly on laptops. Mara led him to a corner booth, far from the windows. He sat down, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing into him. Mara placed the folder on the table. "You're safe here," she said. "No one will bother you." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he reached for a glass of water she had ordered. He drank slowly, letting the cool liquid calm the burning in his chest. Mara watched him, patient, silent, like a lighthouse waiting for a ship to stop drifting. "I didn't know what else to do," Ethan admitted finally. My stepfather. He hits. He scares my mom. I can't keep living like that." His words tumbled out in a rush. Mara didn't interrupt. She let him speak, each sentence spilling the weight of months, years even, of fear and tension. "I thought saying no would help," Ethan continued. "But it only makes things worse. She tries to protect me." "I know she does, but sometimes I think she's protecting him more than me." Mara reached across the table and placed a hand lightly on his arm. The gesture was simple, gentle, but it carried a sense of grounding that Ethan hadn't felt in a long time. "You're not alone in this," she said, "and you don't have to face it by yourself." Ethan looked into her eyes. There was no judgment there, no impatience, just acknowledgement, recognition of the struggle he had lived through quietly. He felt something shift in him. A small part of hope, fragile but real, began to take root. Over the next hour, Mara asked questions, quietly, carefully, not intrusive, but enough to help him speak about the things he had tried to bury. His living situation, the financial pressures, the constant tension at home. Each revelation seemed to lift some invisible weight from his shoulders. He realized he hadn't spoken about these things out loud in months, maybe years. "Help with some resources," Mara said finally. "Short-term housing, guidance on finances, support programs. You don't have to leave your mother behind if you don't want to, but you do need somewhere safe to stay tonight." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. The thought of leaving home, leaving Claire, was terrifying. But the thought of staying meant more pain, more fear. He nodded slowly, trying to make the decision calm and logical, even though his heart was pounding. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll do it. I'll take the help." Mara smiled, not triumphantly, not patronizingly, but with quiet reassurance. She handed him a card with her direct line, her email, and a note about the housing program. "Call me if you need anything," she said, "even if it's just to talk." Ethan clutched the card in his hand as if it were a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, he felt the possibility of safety. He didn't know what the night would bring, didn't know if he would find a place to sleep, but he had a plan. A path. Outside the cafe, the street was starting to darken. Lights flickered on in the shops, and the city began to hum with evening energy. Ethan and Mara walked slowly, discussing the program and the steps he needed to take. Each step felt heavy but determined. When they reached a quiet corner, Mara stopped. "Tomorrow," she said, "we'll make calls, set things up. We'll have a room. You'll have options. You won't be trapped again." Ethan felt the tension in his body begin to ease, though the ache from Ron's strike remained. "Thank you," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "You're stronger than you think," Mara replied, "and you're not invisible." Ethan glanced at her, seeing the truth in her words. In a world that had often ignored him, that had left him, silent and scared, she had seen him, a stranger, and yet someone he could trust. That night, he found a small, temporary shelter arranged through the program Mara had mentioned. The room was modest, just a bed and a desk, but it was his. A place where he could breathe without fear, where he could lay his head without wondering if Ron would appear. As he settled in, he thought about Mara's words: recognition, acknowledgement, safety. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he had more than just survival. He had choice. He drifted off to sleep, thinking about the next day, calls to be made, steps to be taken, courage to gather. Outside, the city pulsed quietly, oblivious to his struggle. But inside, he felt a spark of hope. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that tomorrow, with Mara's help, he might finally take control of his life. Not in a rush, not recklessly, but steadily. The first steps were hard, but at least they were his own. Ethan slept that night with the fragile peace of someone who had faced darkness and found a hand to hold. The storm at the bank had passed, but the work of rebuilding had just begun. And for the first time, he was ready to take it on. Ethan woke to the soft hum of the radiator in the small room Mara had helped him find. The bed was narrow but clean. The sheets smelled faintly of soap. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't wake to the sound of raised voices or footsteps. That carried threat. He sat up slowly, rubbing his side where Ron's strike had left a lingering ache. Even though the pain persisted, it was tolerable here. No one would hit him, no one would yell. Here, he could breathe. He pulled on a hoodie and stepped over to the small desk. Mara had left a folder with brochures, contact numbers, and program details. Ethan spent the next hour reading, absorbing each word, each possibility. There were short-term housing options, part-time work programs, counseling services, and even mentorship opportunities. He had never imagined anyone would care enough to lay out a plan like this for him. It was overwhelming, but comforting. A knock at the door made him jump. Mara stepped in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Her smile was calm, encouraging. "Morning," she said softly. "Thought you might need this." Ethan took the cup with a small smile. "Thanks," he said. The warmth of the liquid helped shake off the lingering tension from last night. Mara sat on the edge of the bed, not too close, not too distant. "How's your side?" she asked. "Better," he replied. "Sore, but better." "You should eat something," Mara said. "You need energy today. Lots to do." Ethan nodded. He realized that the first part of recovery wasn't just physical light, was practical. He needed to rebuild a life outside of fear, Mara had lined up appointments for him, starting with a local housing coordinator. The idea of meeting someone new, explaining his story again, made his stomach twist with nerves, but Mara's calm presence helped steady him. By mid-morning, he was walking through the city streets, folder in hand, Mara guiding him. The program coordinator, a middle-aged woman named Grace, welcomed him warmly. Grace listened without judgment, her eyes full of understanding. She explained the housing options, the work programs, and even a small stipend for necessities. Ethan filled out forms, signed papers, and for the first time felt like he had some control over his future. Each signature was a small act of courage, a quiet rebellion against the life Ron had forced him into. After the appointments, Mara suggested lunch at a small cafe near the office. Ethan hesitated, but agreed. Over sandwiches and tea, Mara listened as he spoke about the tension at home, the beatings, the fear. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge. She only offered guidance and understanding. "You're doing the right thing," Mara said. "Sometimes leaving is the only way to protect yourself. It doesn't mean you don't care about your mother. It just means you have to care about yourself too." Ethan nodded. The words resonated. For years he had carried guilt alongside fear. Guilt that he couldn't make things easier for Claire. Guilt that he was the problem in Ron's eyes. Guilt that he wanted to leave. Mara's words made it seem possible that he could care for himself without abandoning everyone. The afternoon passed with more steps checking on potential work, visiting a small shared apartment option, and even applying for a part-time job. Each visit, each interaction made him feel more like a person rather than a hostage to circumstance. Mara stayed close, a steady presence, reminding him of the small victories, encouraging him when fear or doubt crept in. By evening, Ethan returned to the small room, exhausted, sore, but alive. He sank onto the bed and allowed himself a moment to breathe fully, without tension. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel trapped. He had a plan, a safe space, and someone who genuinely cared. Mara had given him tools and guidance, but it was his courage, his willingness to act, that had made it real. Later that evening, Mara stopped by again, not to check on him, but to sit and talk. They shared a quiet meal, their conversation drifting from practical matters to lighter subjects: music, books, dreams. Ethan mentioned the guitar he used to play, the songs that reminded him of better days. Mara listened, genuinely interested, and even encouraged him to find time to play again. It was a small thing, but it felt like reclaiming a piece of himself he thought was lost. As the night deepened, Ethan reflected on the journey so far. The bank incident, Ron's anger, Claire's silence, all of it had pushed him to the edge. But now, with Mara's help, he could see a way forward. He could survive, even thrive. He could reclaim a life defined not by fear, but by choice. Days turned into weeks. Ethan moved into a temporary apartment provided through the program, started a part-time job, and began attending counseling sessions. Each day was a challenge, but also a victory. He learned to manage his fear, to recognize manipulation, to assert boundaries. Mara continued to guide him, offering advice and support when needed, but also giving him space to grow. One afternoon, while organizing his small apartment, Ethan received a call from Mara. She wanted to meet at a nearby park just to talk. When he arrived, Mara was waiting, a soft smile on her face. They walked through the park, watching the city move around. Them talking quietly. Ethan realized how much he had changed. He felt stronger, more confident, more in control. He could look at the world without flinching. Mara stopped walking and turned to him. "You've come a long way," she said. "I see you now truly. See you. You're not just surviving anymore. You're living." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. The acknowledgement, the recognition from someone he respected, meant more than words could express. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. Mara shook her head. "You did this yourself." "I only guided you." You made the choices, took the steps. You found your strength. Ethan looked out over the park, the lights of the city beginning to glow in the evening. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future beyond fear and violence. He could see himself building a life, pursuing music, making connections, even finding love and companionship. The possibilities felt endless, not because they were guaranteed, but because he had the courage and autonomy to chase them. Over the next few months, Ethan continued to grow. He maintained his job, built friendships, and found moments of joy in music, books, and the simple pleasures of a life lived on his own terms. Mara remained a steady presence, a mentor, a friend, sometimes a confidant. Their bond deepened naturally, rooted in trust, respect, and shared understanding. There was warmth there, an unspoken connection, but it never rushed, never pressured. It grew quietly, like a plant nurtured in the right light. One evening, while returning from work, Ethan stopped near the bank where everything had started. He looked at the building, the glass doors, the quiet interior. Memories of fear and pain surfaced, but so did memories of Mara's kindness, the way she had paused, the way she had acknowledged his struggle. He realized that place, once a symbol of intimidation and threat, now also represented survival and resilience. Ethan took a deep breath and felt the tension in his body ease. He had faced darkness, and while the scars remained, they no longer defined him. He had choices, allies, a plan. Most importantly, he had himself. That night, as he lay in his small apartment guitar by his side, Ethan reflected on the journey. Each step, each decision, each moment of courage had led him here. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Challenges would come, fears would resurface, but he had the strength to face them. He picked up the guitar, ran his fingers over the strings, and played a soft, tentative melody. The music filled the room, a quiet celebration of survival, of freedom, of the future. It was imperfect, raw, but it was his. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt whole. He had escaped the shadow of fear, reclaimed his life, and discovered that even after pain and loss, hope and love could flourish. The journey had been hard, the nights long, but the morning had finally come. He was no longer running. He was arriving. The city outside hummed quietly, oblivious to the small victories within the walls of a modest apartment. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the music carry him. Tomorrow would bring challenges, yes, but also opportunities, and this time he was ready. Fully, courageously, completely. Mara had shown him the way, but it was his heart, his courage that had carried him forward. And as he drifted to sleep, Ethan felt a rare, profound peace. For the first time, he truly believed in the possibility of a life lived freely, bravely, and on his own terms.